Hello and welcome to another episode of TesterSpeak, and I'm your host Brijesh Dev. Well, on the screen already is our good friend Mahesh. Now, Mahesh, I have been following for quite some time, and I was fortunate to have Mahesh as one of my classmates in an RST class with James Buck and Michael Bolton. And I have followed his work quite closely. He's a very, very active member of the test chat community and is always willing to answer a lot of questions, participate in a lot of discussions, and his journey is quite inspiring. So let's speak to him and find out more. Welcome, Mahesh.
Thank you, Brijesh. I'm very happy, and I'm very happy to be here. And you always have been inspiring, and I'm grateful to all the work that you've been doing for the community.
Thank you, Mahesh. You are very kind. Well, I want to talk about something that has struck me when I was going through your LinkedIn profile. Okay, and I was telling you this before we began recording that I was awestruck by your the short story that you have on your profile. I mean, it is very differently written. Normally, people would say, "Okay, my strengths are this, that, blah, blah, blah." But on your profile, there is a short story. Okay, and before I get on to your journey as a tester, I want to hear more about that story. Could you please share your?
See, people always, try to run away from challenges. People always try to run away from failures, right? What they don't realize is there is an equal, if not, more opportunities to learn from a failing project from places where from with projects where there are challenges, right? I mean, people don't realize that. I mean, that's where I love to be engaged with. I love to work with. I don't want to be part of a project where everything is smoothly running, without any challenges, without any, pain points or whatnot. I would love to be part of projects where, it's failing, it's gonna, be a disaster, right? So that's where, I would love to. A lot of people, a lot of especially managers and, testers don't want to be part of that, right? Because, they think if I'm part of this, I'm going to fail along with the project. And they don't realize, what you can actually experience and learn out of the failures, right? Everybody wants to be part of success stories. Everybody wants to be part of successful project, but nobody wants to be part of failures and failure projects. It's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. I have failed many times. I have learned a lot from this failure. It's very important. For me personally, it's very important. And if some managers are running away from a failing project, I'll be the first one to raise my hand and say I want to be part of
Well, that's cool. So guys, I want you to go to Mahesh's profile and check out that story that he has mentioned, where he had such challenging project, and that was a failing project. And of course, like Mahesh said, that he loves doing challenges, and which demanded him to learn a little bit about cloud and go in that direction. And so Mahesh went on to start with that. He saw that there was an opportunity to do an AWS certification. He did that, and then he went on to do six certifications on AWS, which is quite incredible. And now he's a certified architect, so which is absolutely mind blowing, Mahesh. I mean, that is the story, and we all think that okay, if I just put on my LinkedIn profile that okay, I have got certifications, and I just list them, bam, 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 and they will draw a lot of attention. But I really like the way you've described it, Mahesh, on your on your profile.
Yeah, because absolutely. I mean, I had my own reason to do certification. I didn't really do certification to get a new job. I didn't do certification just to show off to people saying that, hey, look, I'm an, AWS certified, to boast around, right? I mean, that's not the reason I did certification. I had
Right.
my own problem to solve, right? That's when I entered into the AWS journey. I mean, if somebody were in my place, right, they would have told their senior managers or director, I have this problem with the infrastructure or cloud, can you get somebody to solve it, right? But I saw that as an opportunity, right? I mean, like I said, I could have happily sat and escalated, this is none of my area. I mean, testing is my focus area, testing is my job, right? So bring somebody who could solve the problem on the cloud and relate it to infrastructure, right? So I didn't do that. I mean, I saw that an opportunity to learn about cloud, learn how cloud and testing could tightly fit in, how they could help each other, right? I mean, I saw that as an opportunity, and also it was very important that as a manager of that team and project, it was important for me to solve whether because otherwise what would happen is the entire team would have sunk, the project would have failed, right? So that's where I jumped in, made use of that opportunity, and like I said, the goal was not to get certification. The goal was to solve a problem,
Right.
which was very very critical, right? I mean, in that journey, certifications happened. I learned a lot, and that's a big journey. I mean, I really got fascinated with the plethora of things, plethora of services that we have with AWS and how they function and how they can enable the entire testing to be successful, right? So that's the journey. I mean, don't do certification. I mean, like you and me and others keep discussing in the test chat. I mean, certification at the end of the day is a piece of paper, right? I mean, it has
Right.
no value, right? I strongly believe in that. But again, don't do certification to secure a job, or don't do certification for the sake of doing it. But if it's part of a journey to solve a problem, do it.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. And we have similar views on why certifications, on why certifications at all. So, yes, you're absolutely right. But there's one more thing. Nowadays, certifications are not just a piece of paper. Nowadays, they are a .png file also. So these days, they've just changed the format a little bit. They used to be a piece of paper, but now they're a PNG file. So which is or sometimes a PDF maybe. So anyways, that's very interesting. And since I began with the cloud direction of it, now let me come back to the testing part of it. Okay, so how did you get started with testing?
I mean, to be very honest, right? When we completed our engineering way back in 2002, 2002, right? So those days, getting a job was difficult, right? Because we had a lot of companies being laying off around 2000 due to the downfall of the IT, and we didn't had a lot of option in front of us. I mean, there were no mentors. You didn't know what you wanted to do, what kind of training you had to enroll, whether you should do Java training, .NET training. .NET was in boom those days, right? So all that was running in my mind was, getting a job and starting off somewhere, right? I mean, I did had my I mean, I did went through a lot of difficulties in getting a job those days, right? I was actually ready to even work without a salary. I mean, all I needed was an experience. All I needed was somebody to mentor and guide me. What's the right direction to go with, right? So that's where I started doing a lot of training. I did training on Oracle. I did training on with Java. Then I did training on .NET. I was kind of trying to learn everything. Whatever if some senior comes and say, hey, why don't you do .NET training? It's going to immensely help you. I would jump in. Start reading about that. Those days, we didn't really had a lot of, training materials, online content, and those kind of stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, even internet was a luxury those times, right?
Right.
So, we had to go to a training center, sit from morning till evening, go through the training, hands on, take help from the senior. It was quite a journey, right? So parallelly, testing also happened. I mean, I did also do some, when there was requirements for, testing to be done. I mean, I got little curious, what is testing all about? And that's where I started with testing as well. Parallelly, I was working as a developer. I did work as a developer for some time. And also, I did try my hands on a lot of freelancing and web designing work. So at the same time, testing also happened. I did get in touch with some people who were doing a lot of testing, and I also got curious. I learned about Windrunner at that time. Windrunner was the tool where people were using a lot to automate and do things. I mean, initially when I got into testing, I thought, testing, it's very easy. Why do people have to really put in so much effort, right? You just click buttons, you just move around and you test them. I mean, even if I would have asked my, 7-year or 5-year-old cousin to do that, he could do that. I mean, why so much fuss about testing, right? So that's when that curiosity started. And when I got deeper into that, then I realized, oh my God, testing is not really easy as we think, right? It has a lot of things, right? Automation testing, performance testing, security testing, accessibility testing, a lot of things into that. And each of them, it's vast in their own area, right? Each of them, it's very, very vast, right? People today think that functional testing, so-called manual testing, is very, very easy, uh, which is absolutely not true until they go knee deep and realize what it takes to become a truly functional tester. It's not easy. I mean, things, grass is always green on the other side, right? I mean, when I stand here and look at that side, I see that development is easy, testing is easy, but that's not really true until you get in there, go deep into that and understand the pain points, challenges. That's the journey I went through. I mean, there's a lot of hardship, there's a lot of uncertainties, ambiguities, no mentors, no people to reach out. So that's how it happened.
Well, it is quite interesting to hear hear about that journey, and it also shows the importance of why you've got to have a mentor, why you've got to have somebody who can help you along the way, tell you the right things. Because yes, you're right. Now we have a lot of access to internet and also to people and things like that. But you know, of course, there is information, but there is information overload as well, and not everything that is available on the internet is true, right? So how would you recommend a tester to approach tester, or for that matter anybody, to approach the information that's available online? What would be your take? Because we have to go in the direction of choosing the right thing, right? For example, I mean, just to give an example so that you can respond, on testing itself, on the testing concepts. Now we see that a lot of times the information that is mentioned on a particular website, I don't want to name websites like that, but there are websites which carry information which is not true, which is in fact spreading misconceptions about testing. And people read that and they believe, oh, this is written in this website, so it must be true. So, how do you suggest that as a tester, I get the right information?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, like I said, way back in our days, everything was a luxury. But today, everything is available at fingertips, right? At the same time, everything, both right information and wrong information are available at the fingertips, right? So that's where people have to be very cognizant of, what they have to consume, right? I mean, it's like college going students, right? I mean, they have access to both bad content and good content, right? So students, they find mentors in their parents, to talk about what is good, what is bad, and also they have a lot of people surrounding them to teach them what is good and bad, right? So likewise, testing, right? Testing community is very big today, right? There are people who do a lot of good things. There are people and groups and communities who do a lot of not so good things, but keeping commercial aspect in mind, right? So a lot of company. I mean, I don't want to call it as a company, but a lot of, I mean, that side of the group, they always focus on the commercialization part of it, right? And the other group, they always want to, and they always want to help the community, give back to the community, right? So identify those things. I mean, it's not a big deal to identify what is good and bad, right? With the information that's available today, right? For example, test chat community is an excellent platform, right, for somebody to come and ask, hey, I'm looking out for a mentor, can somebody please volunteer to mentor me, right? I'm sure you would volunteer to mentor that person. I'm
Yes.
sure a lot of other people would definitely volunteer, right? So it's not really hard to find those kind of good communities, right? Those kind of good communities do exist, will exist, will continue to grow, right? So it's all about people, right? It's all about people. It's all about how they want to consume the information that they've been getting to decide what is good and bad, right? So they have to come be part of communities like test chat, look at what's going on there, ask for help, right? I mean, unless you ask, you would not get it, right? So they could find a mentor in the test chat, ask them what is good and bad. And for example, you said there are some websites or portal which put out a lot of wrong information, right? So when somebody thinks it's a wrong information, or if somebody thinks that what they're reading and what they're consuming, it is not right in certain senses, again, come back and ask in the community, post it on LinkedIn, post it on Twitter, or discuss among your close circle of friends, right? So there are a lot of testing communities that meet on the weekends, that meet on ad hoc basis. They meet whenever you want. I mean, uh, they're so approachable. They're so readily available for you. You can go and get hold of people. You can go and approach communities. It's all about using them. I mean, I see good and bad does exist everywhere. It's just not with testing. It's all about people, how smart they are, and how they would want to consume it, and how they want to differentiate between those good and bad.
Right. Absolutely. I think you made a very fair point in terms of, being able to reach out to people and ask, okay, that I was learning this. Do you think it is the right thing? I mean, it's a very simple question. You seek validation of whatever you are learning from people who have been doing the job for several years. And just to give the example, within the test chat community, we have people like yourself, or people like James Buck, people like Michael Bolton, people like Ajay Balamurgudas. Okay, there are many more. Okay, Mahesh Chikne. I mean, you just name them; they are all there. And I'm just giving you the example of the test chat community, but they are available. Okay, they are available and they are extremely approachable. It doesn't have to be just mandatory that no, you have to come to the community and then ask a question. Well, of course, if you ask in the community, people learn together. That's the benefit of asking a question in the community. But you can obviously reach out, one on one, if you feel that is comfortable. So you're absolutely right. Now I want to ask you something. You said you made a very fair point about embracing failures. What about mistakes? You must have done a few mistakes, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, see, every human being has to commit mistakes, right? You are not a human being if you don't commit a mistake, right? Whether knowingly or unknowingly, you do mistakes, right? Both in personal life and in our professional life, we always do mistakes, right? But you should never do mistakes keeping ego in mind, right? Your inner conscience should tell you whether you are doing a mistake or you are heading in the right direction. For example, right? Uh, when you are building a testing team, right, and you want to hire a lot of people, bring in talent and build frameworks or buy in tools and whatnot, right? So that's the right strategy you will adopt, right? But sometimes what happens, right? You do certain things keeping ego in mind, right? I'm a manager and I bring a technical architect or test architect to guide something, right? So sometimes we know that test architect is right. We know that test architect is providing the right feedback and thoughts or helping you with the goals, right? But still we're not ready to accept that because we feel that he's a test architect, I'm a manager, and I continue to you know do I continue to do what I think is the right because of that ego, right? Let go of that ego, let go of things, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's when that's the mistake I would never want to commit myself, nor I would recommend anybody to do that. If you are doing that mistake, right, nobody is going to pardon you because you knowingly are doing that mistake, right? But sometimes what happens, unknowingly you do the mistakes. I mean, that's okay. You do mistakes and you know about that, you learn about that mistake, right? And uh, the beauty of learning about that mistake is you should never commit that mistake again, or you have to avoid doing the similar mistakes again because you have learned out of those mistakes, right? So that's how I would differentiate. Let go of things. I mean, when you start letting go of things, there are beautiful things that you can achieve as a
That's a very, very interesting point. Letting go. Um, I personally had a problem of letting things go, and I had issues. But thanks to my mentors, thanks to my parents, especially my dad, he's spoken me out of it. The thing of holding on for years. I still have this somewhere that some incidents I just latch on to them. That probably happens with everybody. You just can't get that thing out of your memory. But letting go of situations and letting go of people is extremely important when it comes to learning. And if you just hold on to something, you may have been right. It's not a question of right or wrong. You may have been right. The other person may have given a wrong opinion. But if you hold on to that and if you hold it against a particular person, you are blocking the door of learning. I mean, that's how I look at it. Because after all, that person that you're dealing with may be an expert in some field. And if you shut the door on him or her, I mean, that's. Anyways, I want to now go back a little towards testing, and I have a few questions for you. And I've seen you give some brilliant answers in the group, very well thought out, very well constructed answers. So I want to take this as a learning opportunity. So for you, my first question is, and this is not an interview, not a technical interview, but my question here is, we speak a lot about testing, we speak a lot about results, we speak a lot about metrics, we speak. There are a couple of things that we don't discuss much about. Number one is testability. You know, so what is your thought about testability, how what is the importance you would give to testability?
Very, very important. Very, very important. If you don't talk about testability, you are preparing yourself for a massive failure. That's how I would describe it. The reason is, uh, imagine that a new project is, being rolled out, and architects are working on the technical architecture, right? And then they're not involved any testers or the testing team, right? So when they deploy when the product is ready for testing, you realize that it's not really, testable, right? You cannot test it because we are not really not considered the testability aspect of it, right? So not only the cost would go high, but also testing would become very, very difficult. Testing would be ineffective. People would scramble around, how do I test this, right? Because a lot of times we have seen that where project teams commit a mistake of not involving the testers. They define that technical architecture. They define, let's get MongoDB. Let's have Tomcat versus WebLogic. Let's have something else, right? They don't involve performance testers, for example, right? So when you don't involve performance testers, right, how will they provide input? Whether Tomcat is better than WebLogic or MongoDB is better than Oracle in terms of performance, right? And when you deploy the actual product and tell performance testers to, hey, go and test the product, only to realize that MongoDB is in no way better than Oracle, for example, that's a disaster. That call could have been made much earlier, during the design phase, right, or during the architecture phase, right? So this is just one example, right? There are a lot of examples. It could be testability with performance, automation, functional testing, accessibility, and everywhere we do commit the mistake. The biggest problem that we have is, when that happens, we tend to overlook and say that, that's not the part of the problem. That's a different problem. People don't accept that it's a testability problem, but they attribute that to a very different problem, right? That's the way we look at the failures sometimes, right? Uh, so coming back to testability, so it's extremely important. If you don't, keep in mind about the testability, or if you don't include testability, when you begin with your project, you are signing up for failure. That's how I would say it.
That is exactly what I also think about testability. In fact, I would like to see testability being baked into the project right from the time you are starting to think about requirements or your user stories. When a user story okay, comes in and the product owner says, okay, so, here's my product backlog. And so when you look at the backlog, maybe when you start and then you want to go add into your, you know, your sprint planning, when you pick up those stories, I have never seen or very seldom seen, not never, but sometimes, I have seldom seen people saying, hey, this user story doesn't seem testable. You know, I don't hear those discussions. It's like, oh, this is there. Okay, let's start. Let's start the let's start running with it. I have never come across that phrase in the recent days. You know, it's very difficult. So what is the advice that you would give to not just the testers but people working on in such situations?
I would strongly, recommend, encourage people, to talk to their, leadership team or management, and emphasize how important testability is, right? You don't want to, roll out a product to a testing team only to realize that, the product is not testable because, we had a Selenium framework. Now this new product would not work with the Selenium framework, right? What would you do, right? So people have to really talk to their product owners or scrum masters or managers, whoever it is, make them understand, emphasize on the testability, how important it is going to be, right? If we don't focus on testability from the very beginning, what is the impact that is going to be that's going to have on the overall project and the success, right? So that's where people have to, talk about those lines. I don't see a lot of testers really talking about testability, right? Not a lot of testers talk about testability, right? Until they realize that, oh my God, I cannot test this because I did not really think about testability, from the very beginning. That's a late realization, but it's very important to be vocal about that. It's very important for people to, talk about that, brainstorm about that, in an agile team, talk about testability. When, like you said, when we have a, user story, right? Talk about testability of the user stories. Why aren't we talking? I mean, you have to talk about it.
And do you think testability discussions are an overhead for a team, and that's why they are not uh, picked up?
Not just testability, testing itself is an overhead for the team sometimes. I mean, that's the biggest problem that we have today, right? I mean, forget testability, we don't talk about test data. We don't talk about testers being involved in the design phase. We don't talk about a lot of other things related to testing. I mean, that's the biggest problem that we have today. I mean, if you go back and ask some teams, at least some teams, they would not know what is testability, right? They would not know what is testability until you define it, until you tell them the importance of testability, and until you explain them how it can impact a project. And like I said, even after a project fails, and if you attribute that failure to testability, people will not be ready to accept it. People will tag a different reason for that, and they don't learn from that. I mean, that's the bigger story that we have.
Yeah, in fact, very rarely have I seen poor testability being one of the reasons after doing an RCA. You know, when you do a root cause analysis, you come to a lot of things. Okay, you made a very good point about testing being an overhead. I want to just add one more thing to that. Very often, we notice that testing of a particular product, of an application, of a business process, of whatever comes or occurs as a late realization or as an afterthought. Would you agree?
I I agree 100%. No second thought about that.
People do not think about testing right from the word go. They think about, okay, I want to have this product. They never say, I want to have this product very well tested for my customers. They just say, I want to have this product. This product has immense potential. Once I launch it, I'm going to be a billionaire within a week. Okay, that's the thing, right? So how important is a discussion around testing when a project or when a product is being envisioned?
It's extremely important. I mean, testing, you cannot you cannot say that a product is going to be successful without keeping testing aspect in mind at all, right? So when somebody talks about a product and product development, testing automatically has to come in the picture, right? So that's how important testing is. But a lot of times what happens is, it's all, people talk about testing, people say that, we are providing a lot of emphasis and importance on testing, but in reality, they don't do that, right? A lot of companies, they say that, we are investing so much, time, money, and energy on testing. We are going to be, testing is extremely important for our product, right? But the reality is totally different. Testing does not get the needed importance. Testing takes a backseat. Testing would have a least budget. I mean, if you go and ask, I need, some budget to undergo trainings, or to procure some tools, or to figure out more effective ways of conducting testing, you know people don't approve that budget, right? I mean, because they think that
Or you should never ask. Or you should never ask
yeah,
budget for tools. You should never ask budget for tools. Open source is there. Go open source. I will tell you this. Okay, I was in a project of a company which has an annual turnover of around 15 billion euros. Okay, and when you talk about test tools, they said no, open source. I was like, really? Open source tools might not be able to solve your problem. We have a very particular problem, and there is a tool, commercially available tool, that solves that problem for you. So get us at least one license so that we could play around with it. No, no, no. Go open source.
that's the reality, Brijesh. I mean, see, people talk something and they do something else, right? So when you talk, when your action does not match with your words, that's not going to solve the problem, right? So, anyways, I mean, it's not that people at certain level can solve this problem. People much at higher level, leadership role, they really have to understand. They really have to give the same importance for testing, because testing can make a project or product be successful or failure. So it can define what would happen to the product. So that's where it's important for people to really understand the importance with testing, and provide the necessary budgeting or tooling, resourcing, whatever is needed to make it successful.
Right. Another aspect that is, in fact, I told you that there are two aspects that I was going to talk about, but there are three actually. You reminded me of one more. Another aspect that is, of course, nowadays we are seeing some conversations around it, is test data. Okay. Test data, test data management. We have seen some rise in conversations. Maybe it's just the test chat community which is talking about it, but there are some people who are talking about it. Now, again, going back, how important is or are these discussions around test data? I mean, why do you think the test data needs to be, first thing, figured out, second thing, well sorted, and third thing, well managed?
Test data is definitely one of the biggest challenge that we have across the industry, right? Some people say that they put the first name, last name, pin code in an Excel and they're done with the test data, right? That's not true. That's not the way. And lot of bugs and defects can be caught if you have a well refined, defined test data, right? I have seen this with James Back, how much importance he pays to test data, right? A simple page, you can test and say, it all looks good. There are no defects at all. If you bring in James Back with this test data tooling, management, and experience, I'm sure you can find a lot of defects. So that's how important test data is, right? The variety of test data, the extremes of test data is very important for deep testing, right? You can always do shallow testing with first name, last name, pin code, and say, I'm done. It all looks good. It works with variety of test data. But a good tester with variety of test data, on the extreme boundary conditions, with a lot of permutation and combination, can bring out a lot of defects. So that's how important test data is. We all know that. I mean, it's not that at least majority of the community knows how important test data is, but we still ignore it.
Yeah.
Couple of reasons why we ignore it is, first thing is, it's little hard to really build the test data, manage and maintain the test data that is required for carrying out testing. And sometimes managers don't give people enough time and support to actually deal with the test data, right? And also there are tools that are extremely helpful, both open source and commercial tools that can help with test data, and also with the DevOps tool chain and the cloud at your fingertips. Test data management is much easier compared to a decade back, right? So obviously there are a lot of, I mean, not saying that there's a silver bullet to solve the test data problem, but there are definitely ways to solve the test data problem. But people have to really take it seriously. People have to figure out ways, how to solve their test data challenges and problems, because that's extremely important for testing. If you don't have right test data for your testing, you're not going to achieve what you are looking in terms of the testing goals. I mean, testing would not be really complete and successful without actual test data. So test data is extremely important.
Do you think that our quest for tools has overshadowed the focus on things like testability and test data?
uh, I mean, to certain extent, I would say, and I would agree to that. The moment you have a problem, right? I mean, there is a tendency with the community to look at the tools, right? So if you say test data, right, people would go on Google and say, a tool from CA, let's pick it up and solve our test data problem, right? Likewise, automation testing, right? Let's pick Selenium and solve the automation challenges. Performance, let's pick up JMeter and solve the performance related problem. There, it's not like one fit for all the problems. People really have to look at tailor-made solutions for their problem. I mean, that is what we are missing today. I mean, people want ready-made solutions like MTR, 2 minute, sorry, Maggie, or MTR ready-made cooks, homemade food. So that's how people are looking at. I mean, we should not do that. So if you have a test data problem, if you have a test data challenge, or if you have an automation related challenge, or performance related challenge, try to understand, what is the problem all about? What are you trying to solve? And then automatically all things will fall in place. Which tool, how you're going to fall, how you're going to solve the problem, what you would need it, and everything, right? Don't just go blindly and pick a tool and make it work. I mean, don't make it forcefully work on something. I mean,
Right.
that's never going to long last.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the third point that I was thinking, and that is about test environment. Okay. Another piece which is very rarely occurring in discussions. You know, we see people do talk about tooling. We see people do talk about agile this, agile that, but we've not really seen people saying, "Hey, how should our test environment look like? What should it have?" Okay, we want it to be as close as possible to the production environment, but do we have it in place or not? Or are we sharing that with development? Or what is going on with it? Okay, what should be the components of the test environment? Yeah, I know there is a section in a document called test plan, and there is something that is filled there, but who reads it? Right. So what is your thought?
See, we have always lived with the problem of test environment and infrastructure, and we always treat that as a stepmother because we think that as testers we're not responsible, right? But in my opinion, at least I don't look at that way, right? It's very scary when I have to think that my testing success story is dependent on test infrastructure and test environment, right? I mean, it gives me nightmares when I start thinking about that because, I have undergone similar nightmares and experience where, we literally had to go beg in terms of, in front of the infrastructure team. Hey, can you provide this environment? Hey, can you pull out the logs for me? Hey, can you bump up the, CPU and memory by, so and so for me to conduct effective testing, right? So, I mean, it's very, very scary thing when that happens because you are, you have clearly written a test plan which states that, your testing strategy, your testing, ways of testing, everything is detailed, documented, and, you're going to make it happen in 4 weeks, right? But there comes the testing infrastructure where you are dependent, and it could go beyond 2 months to actually get the right testing environment, right? So what would happen? Your entire testing, planning, strategy, success gone, right? So testing infrastructure and test environment is very important, and it's our own problem. So let's solve the problem of test environment, because who better understands the testing related infrastructure and environment than us, right? We know the requirements of a testing environment and testing infrastructure. So why don't we solve our problem, right? With DevOps toolchain, with cloud, and with other tools and technologies that we have today, testers can be independent. In fact, I recently did a, conference talk where I presented how testers can build their own testing environment, right? So what are the options that we have in front of us, right? So see, testing is one part of the challenge that we are extremely focused on one side, right? On the other side, we are not really looking at solving some of the testing related challenges that can accelerate the whole testing ways and testing that we do and contribute to the overall success. We oversee that sometimes. So test environment, test infrastructure, testability, test data, a lot of these things are really not solved today, right? And as a testing community, we are extremely dependent on them, right? But like I said, we have everything that we need today that can resolve the problem. With Docker containers, Kubernetes, cloud, DevOps pipeline, infrastructure as a code. You can spin up environment whenever you want. You can tear down the environment whenever you want. You can build a production like environment, performance environment, automation environment, everything with a single click of a button. I mean, that's the state we have reached today. And putting the testing environment and infrastructure owners on somebody else, I mean, that's not acceptable, for me. At least if I'm in a project where, if I'm in a company where test environment is a challenge, I would be the first one to take that owners and solve the problem.
Right. And it is very, very important. And often I find that as a missing piece is that until you encounter that bottleneck, you never consider IT or the infrastructure team to be a part of your testing journey. A testing journey is always collaborative. And only when you see, oh, I need, like you said, I need to be in a situation where I have to bump up my CPU or something like that. So I don't even talk about involving IT or infrastructure until then, right? So, so
Right. Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, what is the solution to this? And do you think there is a change in mindset that is required, or or what? I mean, I am looking for an answer.
Yeah, again, testing environment and testing infrastructure, start planning from the very beginning. Even before you begin with the actual project, think about testing infrastructure. How many testing environments would I need? What sort of testing environment would I need? How do I build this environment? How do I make it available for the testing team, right? So today I have seen a lot of testing teams actually being dependent on the testing environment, and they sometimes wait for hours to days to actually get hold of the test environment to run their testing. I mean, that's the reality, that's the hard truth that we have today, right? So that's because testing teams do not take the onus on them. I mean, they think it's somebody else's problem, right? So you actually need the environment, and you actually do a lot of things in the environment. So why put the onus on somebody else, right? Put the onus on your team. I mean, managers have to take the responsibility of dealing with the testing environment and infrastructure. If you don't have a capabilities inside the team to build your own testing environments and infrastructure, at least lay out a plan, at least start the conversation from the very beginning to identify, who is going to help with the environment, what sort of environment, what is the availability. If environment is not going to be available, what is going to be the impact, right? So start having conversation on those lines so that, you don't have to start talking about test environment at a later phase in the project, right? So that's going to be very, 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 late in the cycle. And I'm sure again you'll be signing up for the failure if you don't plan, for the test environment from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely right, Mahesh. And I would also think that testers, as testers, it is quite important that you understand the product architecture, you understand the test architecture, and it is a myth, in my opinion, that when you talk about test architecture, only the automation team is concerned about it. I mean, if you are not into automation, doesn't matter. Get yourself involved, understand the architecture, understand it from a perspective that development is happening. Is there any other thought you would like to add to that?
Uh, Testers have always been, categorized as black box tester or white box testers, and majority of the testers safely wanted to be a black box tester. For some reason, I mean, it could be either they don't like to go beyond the black box because they don't want to get technically involved. They don't like coding, and a lot of different reasons. They always wanted to be a black box testers, right? Uh, but with today's technology trends and transition that's happening, it's extremely important to be a glass box tester, right? So glass box tester is somebody who would really understand what's going on inside, not just looking from the outside UI screen, right? So what exactly happens in the inside the architecture, right? It's very important to understand what forms an architecture, right? A lot of people don't really know about their architecture. They have difficulties in explaining the architecture. They don't understand what forms an architecture, what component forms the product, right? They don't know if it's a WebLogic, Tomcat, what kind of backend has been used, what kind of API calls are being made, how everything fits in together, right? So if you don't understand that piece, right, you're not going to be effective at your job. You extremely have to understand how everything is fitted in a project, like Flipkart, right? If you want to work on a Flipkart product, it's extremely important to understand, what forms Flipkart, right? How is it built? What kind of technology, what kind of components, what kind of backend, right? When you start understanding that, you can build a mind map, a mental map in your mind, how everything is fitting together, how to really have the test architecture or testability, or how do you conduct effective testing, what kind of things, how do you strategize. So automatically those things start falling in place, right? uh, so it's very important, testers to go beyond the UI, start understanding everything about that, to be really effective at their job.
Right. Uh, Talking about test environment and test architecture and all that, I completely agree with your perspective on being a glass box tester. But a lot of testers are caught in this situation where you are either an automation tester or you're classified as a manual tester. And I find that funny, actually. You know, it's not a it cannot be a binary thing. Okay, testing is nothing about testing is binary. That it has to be either a pass or a fail. Okay, my dashboard should be either green or red. Okay, similarly, testers either automation or manual. Okay, so what you're saying is absolutely in line with my thought process, and I commend you for that. Uh, Now it brings me to another interesting question, and this is more from a career perspective. Okay. Now I know that a majority of your career he has been into management, yet you are, you know, technically very sound, uh, you know, involved in testing as much as you would want your team to be involved. So, what would be your recommendation for people in that position where they might enter a leadership role, become a lead or a manager soon? Would you? What is your recommendation for such people in testing?
It's an interesting question. So, people, whether you get into management or not, right? I mean, with today's way of functioning, today's way of operation, it becomes very important for managers to really, understand certain technicalities of this, right? For example, I think we had a conversation yesterday around this as well. Whether your manager has to be, technically sound, or it should be only good at management, right? Uh, a manager definitely has to be good at management, because he would have his own set of things to deal with. But sometimes it also becomes important, to understand the technicalities of the team that you are leading. For example, if you are leading a cloud team, right? If you don't understand anything about cloud, anything about AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, right? It becomes extremely important to talk the same language with your team, right? Somebody can come and ask you, hey manager, I'm running into this problem. I'm not looking at you come and sit along with me and solve the problem, but at a high level, do you understand this problem? Can you, so can you help me? How do I need to approach this problem, right? So when those conversations happens, if you don't understand a bit of the cloud, it becomes very hard for you to even respond or even have a meaningful conversation with your team member, right? So that's where and moreover, it's not really very difficult for a manager to learn wherever, whichever team he gets into. If he gets into DevOps team, right? So it doesn't take a lot of time to really understand, what is DevOps, what forms DevOps, what kind of tools, what is Packer, Terraform, Ansible. If you have a quench for learning,
Yeah,
it doesn't take a lot of time to really learn, at least to a level where you can start the conversation with your team, right? Nobody expects that you become a master, you become an expert at Ansible or Terraform and start, coding, right? I mean, that's not the level of expertise people are seeking from you. I mean, all people are telling is, when I have a problem, when I approach you, can we talk the same language, right? That's what people are expecting. So, in my opinion, whether you want to go in the technical line or whether you want to stay in the management line, it's very equal. It's very important to balance both of them, right?
yeah,
Balance both of them, right? So I cannot say that I'm a functional manager or I'm a project manager and I'm responsible for that. I mean, you can definitely say that as per your organization roles, responsibilities, and everything. But people will appreciate when you take that extra step, when you take that extra mile, to have those meaningful conversations because of the trainings and hard work that you have put in to learn something, right? That's the support you're showing to your team members. I mean, if you don't put in that support to tell people that I'm with you, I share the same kind, I understand it, right? People are not going to recognize and value, right? I mean, it's all about how you look at the problem, Brijesh. I mean, you see, like I said, I'm a manager, right? I mean, if I don't involve technically, nobody is going to come and ask me why you're not involved
right,
with technical, right?
right.
Because I feel that I have to help my team. I feel that if I learn this, I can be some help to my team, right? So that's part of how you take the problem, right?
Absolutely. I also share the exact same thought that if you want to solve somebody's problem, get close to it. So if you think that you want to understand what your team is going through, you want to help them, and as a manager you should be looking at that perspective. So it always helps if you are involved with that technically as well. Nobody's asking you to go neck deep, into it. Nobody's asking you to, absolutely dive deep. Help the team, and to help the team understand at least what their pain point is, and to understand, have that much bare minimum technical knowledge. It doesn't have to be, oh, I know how a rocket works. I can. I am sending the next rocket to moon or wherever. No, you don't have to be like that. So, anyways, a lot of serious discussion on testing. Now for some a few rapid fire questions for you. Okay, so you've got 5 seconds to think of the answer,
Okay.
and in case of multiple choice, please explain why
Okay.
with the choice. Okay,
Okay.
so I know you've shared this with me already that you've been a Bangalore boy throughout. So, what's your next favorite city
Uh,
in the
I would
world?
uh, I would say Kerala,
Okay,
Trivandrum, or Cochin.
I like that. I like that. Well, Kerala is good. So, how often do you go to holidays?
Not much, I have two kids, one is 11 years and the other one is 5 years. When the second one was born, we didn't really had a lot of vacations. But we actually, in fact, planned for a vacation last year, but due to COVID and other things, we could not really make it. But certainly, one thing I'm planning to do is have a lot of vacations every quarter or every 6 months. That's something I'm missing out big time these days.
Well, yeah, that's one thing that I've seen, um, especially here in Europe, when the school shuts in summer for 6 weeks. It's the July August period. Uh, it's summertime. It's fun time. You would see every single person going on vacation, right? And it's 6 weeks. The most important thing is if you do not go on vacation, you have to manage your kids at home for 6 weeks. So going on vacation is an easier choice, And we saw a lot of that with the lockdown. Well, of course, we are in a state of lockdown even now, as I talk here in the Netherlands. In fact, it is much more stricter because we have a nighttime curfew which has been imposed, which is like 9 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. It's a curfew, and if you are found on the street, you're fined. You have to pay a fine. So it's that strict. So imagine that, and imagine being in such a state, and then have the kids at home. People were really, really challenged. Yeah, having to work from home with kids at home. So the moment they get this break, the summer break for 6 weeks or whatever, let's go. Okay. So that brings me to my next rapid fire question, and that is, of course, my favorite subject of all. That's food. What's your favorite food?
Biryani,
What kind of biryani? There's plenty of variety.
chicken biryani, mutton biryani.
Oh, yeah, non-vegetarian. Okay, good. Good. Well, that's nice. So, have you have? I mean, that's a silly question, but I'll still ask you. What was your last international visit?
Uh, The last one was I had been to LA.
Okay.
Uh, it's, I mean, it's been quite some time. I traveled actually. I didn't really want to leave my family alone here, so I had to let go of a lot of traveling. The last one was LA.
And how does the LA compare with Bangalore?
LA is a very good city. It's a fantastic city. I like the city, the beaches, the people, and Hollywood. It's good.
That's that's one of my destinations to go. I've been in the US. I've lived there for some time, but haven't had the opportunity of visiting LA. So that's a good one. So I may take some tips from you on
Sure.
on, on places to go and and especially find spots where I can get good food, because when I am traveling, that's the most important thing on my agenda. And normally the way I do it is when I'm traveling, I follow the policy of eat what the locals do. So if I say, for example, go to Kerala, when I went on a vacation to Kerala, I instructed the driver, okay, take me to places where you would eat. I don't want to go to a fancy restaurant and eat food there. And when I said that, the driver took me to places where they had these original, absolutely authentic, food where you get. So because they are locals, they know exactly what. So I said, okay, I'm a non-vegetarian. I eat a lot of fish, of course. Fish is, Kerala, if you go, there's plenty. I eat a lot of fish. Okay. I eat almost everything. So I leave it up to you. And he took me to some of the best places. And it was fantastic. So if you guys are traveling, try and follow this. Okay, eat what the locals do. I know it becomes difficult as vegetarians, because sometimes the locals don't eat so much of vegetarian food. For example, if you go to South America, of course, it is going to be a bit of a challenge, but try that. Anyways, so I think we've been speaking for a long time. We didn't realize that time has flown so fast. I uh, want to ask you one last question. Okay. If you were not a tester, or not a cloud enthusiast, or if you are not in IT, okay, because you do so much, and it's so wide. It's not just testing. It's a lot in the field of IT. If you were not in the field of IT, what would you be doing?
I I love a lot of cars, bikes, and automobiles, those kind of stuff. So probably I would have ended up as being a mechanic or a racer, or be in the automobile industry doing something.
I am not surprised with the background picture that you have. It's the it's the starting this thing of a Formula One race, as I can see. So, well, that's very interesting, and it's very nice to hear from people what alternative career choices they would have had. So this one is a really nice one. Well, thank you so much, Mahesh. I mean, I had been waiting to do this interview for a long, long time. We've had conversations, we've had some situations where we've had to reschedule, but finally, we had this opportunity. It was a learning experience for me. Uh, as always, your interaction in the test chat group is phenomenal. It's really awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. And of course, there's a lot to be discussed, but as time is premium, we would probably meet again in chapter two, because there's some things cooking. Okay, everybody will come to know about it soon. So, so we'll see how that goes. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Brajesh. Thanks a lot.
It was a pleasure. Let's keep talking. Let's keep chatting in the test chat community. Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.